Shalom Aleichem. I would like today to speak about a certain matter. Perhaps we should not learn much about what I am going to say, but it's possible to say at least the majority of the things that I am planning to say. It is possible that we will be mentioning the topic of reincarnations, which I know people know about it, but how much do we know about it? So, first we should remind everyone that right now we are in the midst of those 3 weeks which are known by the famous term Ben HaMetzarim. Now, Metzarim, the word Metzarim has been explained in different ways by many of the commentators. But Rashi says Ben HaMetzarim, which suggests the word Tzara, which means disaster or misery. And these are the 3 weeks between the 17th of Tammuz up to the 9th of the month of Av. Those are 3 weeks in which we mourn for the destruction of our temple, the first temple and the second temple. It has been destroyed on the 9th of Av, but what preceded the destruction of the temple was, of course, the terrible war between the Jewish people who were besieged in the first temple. In the time of the first temple, it was by the Babylonians, right? By Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. And the second temple by the Romans, we all know. And we mourn for this disaster, and we keep hoping that the day will come, as has been prophesied by the prophets, that it shall come back, that the temple, Bet HaMikdash, will be rebuilt again when the redemption of Israel will be completed, by the coming, of course, of the Redeemer, of the Messiah. So these are 3 days in which, 3 weeks in which we are not supposed to do many things. For example, happy occasions do not pertain to these 3 weeks. For example, by the Ashkenazim, they do not get married from the 17th of Tammuz, 3 weeks, up to the 9th of Av. Whereas the Sephardim, they don't get married from the beginning of the month of Av, up to the 9th of Av. All right, but we understand also that these are weeks which might be dangerous, even though halachically it might be not so much forbidden. But, for example, going to the beach, or flying and going to other countries, and I know that this is the season in which people, they like to go elsewhere. Well, we suggest that they should be more careful. That's all. People should be more careful. If they want to go to the beach, they can go to the beach, but they have to be very careful. If they want to take to fly somewhere, if possible not to, it's better. But if they have to, they can do it. But nevertheless, attention is given to those 3 weeks, so people will have to be more careful. When you send your children elsewhere, you have to make sure that they know that they should be careful about everything. Why? Because in those 3 weeks, apparently there is what we call midat ad-din. The measure of justice is harsher, which means those are 3 weeks which were not great for the Jewish people. Therefore, the mazal, the luck of the Jewish people is not the greatest. For example, it says in the halakha that if you have a problem with a non-Jew, for example, and you are planning to go to the judges to be judged, better to avoid that time, not if possible. If possible only, but wait until after Tisha B'Av. Why? Because those 3 weeks, the luck of the Jewish people is not the greatest. All right. That's one thing. What we would like to ask is, since I told you that I have the intention to mention at least the matter of reincarnations, well, that brings me to the story of Pinchas, the son of Elazar, the son of Aharon the priest, Aaron HaKohen. Of course, this parasha was read already last Shabbat. Nevertheless, it pleases me to talk about it. I mean, Pinchas avoided a terrible tragedy to befall upon the Jewish people by behaving in a way that was not suggested by anybody, not even by Moses. What happened? We all remember that Bil'am did not succeed to curse the people of Israel. So he left Balak. But when he was leaving Balak, he said to him, I give you an advice. With these people, you cannot destroy them. However, you cannot curse them. They are blessed by the Almighty. But there is one thing that you can do against them. Bring them into falling into sin. Do something that they will sin. When they sin, automatically they will be punished and they will be hurt. Like what? You have girls in the nation of Moab. The girls of Moab are beautiful. Send them, to behave in a bad way, in a forbidden way, but send them to mingle among the Jews in their camp, the camp of Israel. And you will see that the evil inclination will reign supreme. And the Jews will fall into that and commit sins that are forbidden relations with the daughters of Moab. And not only that, but even the prince of the tribe of Shimon, known as Zimri, he himself associated himself sexually, let's put it this way, with the princess of Midian, who was very beautiful. Her name was Cosbi, the daughter of the king of Midian. And lo and behold, Zimri, who was a great man, but he went and he behaved in a very bad way. He committed a sin, sexual forbidden relation with this girl in front of everyone. And he did not even care about the greatness of Moshe. Having Moses standing right there and to do it, that's what we call the biggest chutzpah. But in the meantime, the sin committed by all the Jewish people was paid dearly. We lost 24,000 members of the Jewish race at that time due to a plague that befell them at that time when they committed the sins with the daughters of Moab. Until Pinchas came and intervened. How? By killing on the spot, without asking any permission, he killed Zimri together with the princess of Midian, Cosbi. He did not ask permission. It's like if he decided a halakha, a Jewish law, without going to the big rabbi. That is Moses at the time, right? He should have asked him. He did not wait for any advice from Moses. And he went and he killed the prince of the tribe of Shimon. In the eyes of the sages of Israel, this behavior was not accepted. They did not like it. In fact, according to the sages of Kabbalah, all the 24,000 of people who died in that plague were from the tribe of Shimon. And that's why the tribe of Shimon came against Pinchas and they endangered his life. But a miracle happened. God himself intervened, and he turns to Moshe and he says, Pinchas ben Elazar, ben Aharon HaKohen, Pinchas the son of Elazar, and the son of Aharon. That gave him tremendous respect in the eyes of the Jewish people, especially those who thought that Pinchas perhaps comes from the line of Yitro, a non-Jew. So therefore, how dare he behave in such a way? But God appreciated very much the act of Pinchas. Why? Because of the act of Pinchas, call it any way you want, that served as an act that stopped the tragedy. He stopped the plague. And automatically people stopped to die. Yes, we did lose 24,000. And the question that you can ask is, why is it that because of one sin that has been committed in such a way was punished in such a terrible way? 24,000 died. The answer is, we are going to learn more about it. Those 24,000 people from the tribe of Shimon came from somewhere. They were, according to the sages of Kabbalah, that they came from the first Gilgul, the first reincarnation, which happened thousands of years ago, from the time of Yaakov, our father. If you remember the story as brought in the book of Genesis, Bereshit, we find that the people of Shechem ben Hamor was the leader of that city, of that country. He was the king. And he told Yaakov, why don't you come and be with us? We can become one nation. Yaakov saw that there is a danger. To be against them openly is impossible. So what do? So he suggested, would you like us to be with you? Okay. But there is one condition. The condition is that you should perform circumcision. When you perform circumcision, we will feel that we become one nation with you. Immediately Shechem and his son, all of them accepted, and all the nation of Shechem accepted, and they all circumcised themselves. On the third day of their circumcision, which in the eyes of our sages is the most painful day, that's the day when two brothers, all this started, you know the story, it all started because of the sister of Shimon and Levi. Their sister Dinah, born from Leah, our mother Leah. But she was a little lighter than others, well, let's call it this way. And she was beautiful, and she attracted the son of Shechem. And he took her by force. And that's how we see now the engagement between the rulers of Shechem and Hamor together with the children of Yaakov. The children of Yaakov were exasperated to the maximum. How dare he take our sister? That's why they came to some kind of arrangement, as we have explained before. You do circumcision, then we become one nation, and then everything is fine. However, Shimon and Levi, those two brothers, did not accept the fact that their sister was raped and taken by people like this. So they waited until the third day after the circumcision of the people of Shechem, and they went and they killed all the city. They killed Shechem and Hamor and all his country. At that time, a king could be the king of a country which is a population of few thousands. And the sages of Kabbalah tell us that there were exactly 24,000 people in the city of Shechem. And those were killed by Shimon and Levi. I mean, they took advantage of the fact that all the city, all the country was in pain, and they went and they killed all of them because of what they did to their sister Dinah. Later, what happened later is a story that in the Torah, but nothing happened really, but nevertheless, their father Yaakov was exasperated, he was angry at them, and that's all. But the sages of Kabbalah say that those 24,000 who circumcised themselves, even though they were not Jewish at the time, but they were reincarnated in those 24,000 people who died in the plague in the time of Pinchas. We're talking about a long time after what happened by Shechem and Hamor. But those people, because they circumcised themselves, they needed that which we call tikkun. I mean, something that we can say to fix a remedy to what happened in the past. And that's why they were reincarnated as the people who died in the plague in the time of in the time of Pinchas. And yet, the story is not ending there. There was to be a third reincarnation by the same 24,000. When? We find it in the Gemara Masechet Evamot on page 62, that all the disciples, all the students of Rabbi Akiva, the great Torah leader of the Jewish people at the time, all of them died. 24,000 students of Rabbi Akiva died. Our sages say because they did not respect one another. Of course, we are not going to explain. What do you mean? Those were the disciples of Rabbi Akiva, great people. But to a certain degree, according to their level, they are being judged. But at the same time, they were, according to the sages of Kabbalah that we have mentioned before, they were the ones, the 24,000 who died before in a previous reincarnation, and now they have completed the remedy, the fixing of their whatever happened, and now they are enjoying, to a certain degree, if we understand or not, in heaven. Okay, this is the story of reincarnation, and this is the story of reincarnation in general. Let me just suggest the following. Why is it that the Parashat of Pinchas is being read in those 3 weeks that we say? So there are possible explanations. Some of them I would like to bring to you, even though they are Hasidic explanations. We have first Rabbi Israel of Rugin, a great Admor, who explains. First, you should know that the parasha of Pinchas does not have only the story of Pinchas and the plague that killed the 24,000. Half the parasha at the end is talking about all the holidays of the Jewish people, and also the sacrifices that were brought in each one of those holidays, whether it is Pesach or Shavuot or Rosh Hashanah or Yom Kippur or Sukkot. All of them were discussed in this parasha, and the question is why? So Rabbi Israel of Rugin says, because those 3 weeks are the weeks of misery of the Jewish people, but at the same time we mourn for the destruction of the temple. So what is important, what behooves the Jewish people is to feel some kind of sadness because of what we have lost. How are we going to feel that? So Rabbi Israel of Rugin says something extraordinary. He says those 3 weeks are in fact going to be, in the time of redemption, going to be a very big holiday. 17th of Tammuz will be a holiday by itself. Then the following days, 3 weeks, will be Chol HaMoed, the days in between the first holiday and the second holiday. And then the greatest holiday will be on the 9th of Av. And that's why we read the parasha of Pinchas in most of the time. We read in those 3 weeks, right? There is a second explanation by the Sfat Emet. The Sfat Emet says an explanation which appears to be much more concrete and much more possible to understand. He says, remember, what we read in this parasha of Pinchas, we read about the sacrifices that were brought in every holiday in the time of Bet HaMikdash, the time of the temple. Why? Then why do we read Pinchas in these 3 weeks? Because in these 3 weeks, it is important that we should feel the loss that we have incurred. Every Jew should feel and hope for a future in which the temples will be rebuilt again. But for that you need to feel bad about it. By reading the parasha of Pinchas and reading about the sacrifices, you are reminded of what used to be in the time of Bet HaMikdash, and then that will bring into the heart some kind of expectation, some kinds of longing towards the coming of the redemption of the Jewish people following the building of the Bet HaMikdash, the temple of Israel, hopefully in the time. So since we have mentioned Pinchas, let us conclude this talk with Pinchas. So Pinchas behaved in a way that was not permitted. I mean, not even by Moshe, it was not clear whether Moshe agreed with that. Until God himself intervened, we could not accept the act of Pinchas by killing Zimri, the prince of Shimon, despite his sin. So, we would like to see in the parasha, what does it say in the very beginning of the parasha? That not only the plague stopped because of the intervention, the act of Pinchas, but also God rewarded Pinchas in a great way. The words are, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aaron HaKohen Heshiv et Chamati. God is talking and he says that Pinchas, I appreciate very much what he did because he caused me not to be angry anymore at the Jewish people by behaving in such a way and killing Zimri, even though it is not an act that is permitted by the Jewish people by the halakha. According to halakha, one is not allowed to take the law in his hands, right? And he is not allowed to decide something without asking his teacher. In the time of Pinchas, the teacher of the Jewish people was Moshe. He did not ask his permission. So he was going to be in grave danger, at least from the side of the tribe of Shimon, right? Remember, Zimri was the prince of Shimon, of the tribe of Shimon. But at the same time, God not only he stopped the plague, but he also rewarded very much Pinchas. How did he reward him? Hineni noten lo beriti shalom, והייתה לו ולזרעו אחריו ברית כהונת עולם. In this verse, we see 3 kinds of rewards. Our sages say, we find in Masechet Eruvin on page 63, that anyone who takes the law in his hands without asking his teacher, his Torah teacher, will have to pay for this, for committing this kind of sin. And what is the kind of payment? Either he is bitten by a poisonous snake, or he might just die without children, or even if he gets into a high position, he will be brought down from his position. Those are the 3 possible punishments for someone who decides to take the law in his hands without asking permission, halachically talking, from his Torah teacher. So God, first it says, "Venatati et beriti, venatati lo beriti shalom." I give him peace. Our sages explain in the Talmud, in the Gemara that we have mentioned before, that God made sure that he is not going to be killed by any wild animal, any wild beast, like a poisonous snake, for example. By saying beriti shalom, peace, And then in the Torah, in the Parashat Bechukotai, we see Venatati Shalom Ba'aretz Vehishbati Chayara, that by giving peace into the land of Israel, peace will also cause the animals, the wild beasts, not to come and bother the people who live in the land. So that's how we see that at least he is saved from the first kind of punishment. From the possible punishment that he might die without children, the Torah openly says, "Venatatilu ul zar'o acharav." I shall give, Pinchas, God is talking, and he says, I shall give to Pinchas and his descendancy, which means his children, all the people who will come after him, his children, grandchildren, they will all be high priests. So we have here that we took care also of the second punishment, that he might die without children. God says that he will have not only children, but a long line of great children. What about the third punishment, that he might be taken down from his high position? God is guaranteeing him that his children also and his grandchildren will be occupying the high position of the high priest. And then we see that Hashem, for the first time in Jewish history, that he does take the side of the one who apparently behaved in a way that is not accepted. This will suggest the following, but only in a certain possible way. We know that unfortunately in the land of Israel today, modern Israel, there is a commotion that cannot be described with words. There is at least about half the population, less than half the population, that is behaving in a way that is so illogical and yet very dangerous for the Jewish people here in the land of Israel. The land of Israel is surrounded by enemies that are about to begin a terrible destruction upon us, and this is the time in which we see a split, a terrible split between the leftist and the rightist. What's going on? Why? Because of judges and no judges. Terrible. I mean, we don't even understand exactly what is the problem. I mean, even if there is a problem, all you have to do is to wait to the next election and maybe you'll get it, and that's it. No. They hate the religious people, they hate the Torah, they hate the religion. They come up in such a way that the manifestations and all kinds of demonstrations that are not acceptable. It's unbelievable what's going on. We don't understand. We are afraid for the state of Israel, that we are in danger. But who knows? Maybe our enemies will enjoy what's going on now, and that's the time when they will choose to attack. All this is telling us that we don't understand anything. It's exactly like the Holocaust. We lost 6 million Jews in the Holocaust, right? Nobody will dare to come up with any explanations. We don't accept any explanation. 6 million Jews died, among them many, many religious people, great Torah people who perished in the terrible Holocaust by Hitler and the Nazis, Immach Shemam v'Zichram. Do we have any explanation? No way. We don't have an explanation. But we should keep our belief in our heart that God has done it. We don't accept it. But if God did it, He knows what He's doing. Now we know that there is the concept of reincarnation. The sages of Kabbalah, they say, of today, sages of Kabbalah of today, they say that apparently the 6 million Jews were 6 million sparks, beginning from the sin of Adam and Chava, which created the forces of evil and the forces of sin, with all the forces that go with it, that we call, due to the fact that the serpent, Zohamat and Nachash, and the effect that he caused in the world, and from that, sin has become greater than a mitzvah. I mean, to commit sin becomes extremely strong. And since then, we do sin. And that's how you see that the Jewish people sinned even though they saw the great miracles of God. What is the explanation to that? Only one explanation. They could not resist to their desires and their all kinds of sinful things. They could not hold themselves back. And that's what happened. Why? Because the power of sin is unsurmountable, unbelievable, much greater than the power of good. Our sages say that Lulle HaKadosh Baruch Hu Mesaye'o eno yacholo. God admits that without His help, you will not win against the evil inclination. So what happened? And all this is started from the time of Adam and Eve and from the sin that they committed. And that they caused the whole world to, and they caused the forces of evil to be spreading all over the world, and especially among the Jewish people, which are closer to God. So the sages of Kabbalah says that the 6 million Jews are 6 million sparks that originated from the sin of Adam, and up to today, and during 6,000 years, they have accumulated, and thus they became Ba'avonut Arabim, those people who died in the Holocaust. Is it an acceptable explanation? Of course not. We don't understand it, but we should know one thing. We are all reincarnation. Rabbeinu Ha'ari, the holy Ari, says that in the last 500 years or so, we are all reincarnations. We were here already in a past life, maybe several times. We were born again and again. Every time we come back to this world, we remedy in something that we have destroyed in a past life. If we sinned certain sins, the only way for us to remedy and to fix that, we have to come back to this world. Some people are happy to hear that they are coming back to this world. Oh no. Once you are there in the other world, you refuse to come. There is a statement of our sages that the neshama begs the angel who tells her, go now to the world, you are going to be reborn again. And she says to him, no, I beg you, I don't want to go back to the world. And finally she has no choice, because he tells her, the decision was made that you have to go back to the world, to be born again. And she said, make sure I am not rich. Why? Because when you're rich, then you are automatically in the hands of sin much more than when you are poor. But that's another matter to discuss some other time. So we understand that we are all reincarnations. And maybe we come back again and again until we fix everything that we did before. And then apparently, if we don't fix at all, then there is a perdition, unfortunately. There is a possibility that, by the way, reincarnations is upon all the world, not only the Jewish people. Everyone is, as you have seen before, what we mentioned before, that the people of Shechem and Hamor, who apparently were the enemies of Israel, right? And nevertheless, they were reincarnated in the form of 24,000 of the people of Shimon, and again reincarnated as the 24,000 of the disciples, the students of Rabbi Akiva, which apparently brings the situation even more unclear than before. Rabbi Akiva himself, the teacher of Israel for all the generation, there was no one greater than him. And yet he was killed, murdered by the Romans in a very cruel way. He was cut to pieces. What happened? It's a long story. That also is touched and explained by the sages of Kabbalah. I will not bring it now, but you should know one thing, that Rabbi Akiva also was a reincarnation of Zimri, the prince of Shimon, of the tribe of Shimon, who was killed by Pinchas. So Zimri had to come back in the form of Rabbi Akiva. Now, why Rabbi Akiva himself was killed in such a way? He was in fact the soul of Zimri before, and this way we know that they are in heaven enjoying looking at the Shekhinah, the divine presence, as our sages say. Again, I know it sounds redundant, but again I have to repeat. Do we understand anything? We don't understand. Sometimes people prefer not to understand. But even people who engage in things that usually are not normally to be understood, by going into Kabbalah and other things that are the mysteries of Torah, nevertheless they cannot expect to understand everything today. Only with the coming redemption that we hoping that it will be maybe in our time, in the coming of the Mashiach, if the coming of Eliyahu will help us maybe, and we know that our sages said that Pinchas, that we mentioned before, became Eliyahu, the prophet Eli. And he will come to explain everything, all the mysteries that we have missed and we did not understand. He will come and explain everything. Once we will know the meaning of the great mystery of life through the teachings of Eliyahu and the Mashiach, then perhaps we will come to a final understanding, and then we can say we understand something. But right now, we understand not. We try to explain a few things, but it's only within the possibility of understanding. Otherwise, oh no, everything is still very obscure, very dark, and let's hope and pray to God that what's happening today with our brothers, the Jews, who don't like the Torah, who don't like the people of Torah and the people who are religious, let's hope that something is going to happen to change everything, and like the prophets already promised, "V'haya Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz," and then they also, who are so much against and so much hateful towards all our tradition, maybe it's a sign that they are close to become lovers of Torah. What I'm saying does not make sense, but it is the only sense that we can make in what's happening today. Shabbat Shalom.